pretty straightforward, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. Jack up your car, place it on axle stands, get yourself some clean working space, have a work light, because we need to get to the back of the car to the calipers. We need to remove the calipers. You can see the bolt here, and there's 2 bolts at the back that we need to get at to remove the caliper. Once we remove the caliper, we can get at the bolt and take the disc off, and it's as simple as that. This isn't a very hard job. Okay, so the first part is just to remove the brake wear sensor. Pretty straightforward. Remember, be very careful when you're pulling it from in here. Be polite, because these things do break. They're cheap to replace, but still you just want to be careful, and then that can just go out of the way. This is probably the most challenging part of the job. The 2 caliper retaining bolts at the back of the caliper. You can see I've got the breaker bar here because you need the leverage. And remember, when you're putting this back on the car, you should respect the torque wrench settings also. Okay, so for the next part to remove the caliper, I usually just use a bit of leverage to leverage it off. Just be gentle, be polite with it, and it should free itself from the disc. And that's pretty much it. You can hang it out of the way. Remember, it's a little bit heavy, but yeah, just put it aside, and that's the caliper removed. I've just removed the caliper in one piece. It's pretty happy just sitting there. And the next part is the removal of the disc. You can see it's just 1 Torx bolt here. When you replace the disc, you should get another bolt to replace the disc on there with. So use the fresh bolt. There's a torque setting associated with it. So before you go to put your brand new brake disc on, just remember to clean the surface of the hub. Any corrosion, any sort of grease or dirt or brake dust or anything, just clean it all off and make it look nice and tidy. Because remember, the disc is going to butt up against this, so you want the face to be nice and square, nice and flush. And yeah, as you can see, after painting these components and things, it does look good. And there it is, the new disc on the back of the car. Now, when you guys go to put the caliper back on, you probably will need something to spread the brake calipers apart, because this new disc is a lot thicker. Just sliding the caliper back on, you're going to find it quite difficult. So you're going to have to find a way to spread the brake pads apart. For me, I'm going to pull the pads out and give them a grease and a clean up anyway, so it's going to make it a bit easier for me. But from this point, if you want to go and just put the caliper back on, you will need some way to spread the brake pads apart, because just because the disc is a lot thicker. Just quickly, guys, remember when you remove the brake pad wear sensor from here, you don't lose this little clip. The little clip, I'm just quickly showing you here, the little clip goes into here, and it does have the tendency to fly off. Once you've cleaned up your brake pads and your components, you can place the carrier back onto the mounting pins. You can just see here that it's done up finger tightness, and that's all you need to do. The next step is you should apply some grease. You can even see a diagram here where to apply within the pad. You can actually see here where you need to apply the grease. So along in these contact points, basically you're applying the grease wherever there's contact points in the caliper. So in here, up in here, and you can see there's even markings where there's contact in the brake caliper. So you'll be applying some grease within here and within here, and it's very convenient that it's already sort of marked out. So just remember to do both brake pads, and you can see here where the piston pushes up against the brake pad, so you can put a smear of grease within here also. So once you've just greased the surfaces, as you can see here, the caliper and the piston section should just slide straight on. It's a lot easier to replace, and you can just see I've just placed grease at these points, and just behind here, and just behind here. And remember to replace the pads as you pull them out from your car, and it should go on hopefully pretty easily. The next part we're going to do is the guide pin bolts. There's one here and there's one here, and just remember there's torque wrench setting for these also. There we have it. Okay, let's get started on the front section. Pretty much the same thing. You want to have your car jacked up, axle stands. You want to have the space clear, have everything clean. We've got our brand new rotors here. Quality powder coating, looking very good. Alright, the first step is just to remove the brake wear sensor and remove the caliper. Okay, so the first bolt you want to tackle is your brake wear sensor. It's pretty straightforward, it's just one Torx bolt. As you can see, mine's pretty much broken, so I'm going to replace it with another one. These are about $5 each or $10 each, depending if you can find them on sale or not, but they're actually pretty cheap to replace. So next up is the rear 2 caliper mounting bolts at the back. Remember, you're going to need a bit of leverage to get these off. I think the torque rating is about 85 Newton meters, so it's on pretty tight. Okay, to remove the caliper, remember it's heavy. Just, you can use a bit of leverage and you can just leverage it out. Just remember, be gentle, be polite with it, and worst comes to worst, give it a tap with a hammer and you might be able to free it up a little bit. Alright guys, remember the front caliper is a lot bigger and a lot heavier. You don't want it to hang by the brake hose, so to make things easier, I'm going to pull it apart. It's just these top two guide pins, and then I'll put some of it aside. I'll have to pull it apart anyway. And some people usually, they cable tie it to the back up here to get it out of the way, but it is big and bulky. Okay, so that's just a shot there with the caliper hanging from the front sway bar. It's just out of the way. And now we've got to put the disc on. Just remember to clean the hub, and then you can fit the disc, and that's pretty much it. Just over here is the other part of the caliper. Give all those parts a good clean up, and you can reassemble. So just refit the caliper bracket onto the disc. You can just do up the bolts. You can do up these bolts finger tightness, and then remember to apply your grease and your metal shims in there also, and you can put the pads back on. Okay, so you fit the pads back in, reapply the grease to the contact surfaces. You can sort of see there on the diagram where it needs to go. Also, here's a contact surface here when the caliper goes over the top. You can see I just haven't got grease in here, basically where the blue writing is, because there's nothing touching that surface, so there's no need to put grease on it. The same as with the other side there. You can see where the piston touches the 2 brake pads. There's 2 pistons in the front caliper, those 2 circles. So just place a bit of grease there too. So the last bit is to torque the guide pin bolts. I think it's about 32 Newton meters. There's one here and there's one down here. And then the final large bolts, there's one at the top and just one underneath. There's 2 at the back, and they're about 85 Newton meters. So there we go. It's looking pretty good. And you can see it says on here the minimum thickness 25 mil. And if you just measure on the calipers, you can basically see how much run out you've got to do. It's measuring 29 by the looks of things.